Good morning. I'm Rev Gy. I'm delighted to have you here this morning. I welcome you there on the holy interwebs as well. And so once a year we have a service auction here in our community. And one of the things that I usually offer as a biddable item is for someone to pick the topic for one of my talks. And Sherry bid on this particular one, and I've owed it to her for a long time. And finally, the day has come, and Sherry picked the topic of sharing grief. And so that's what I've been preparing. So Sherry, here you go. This is all for you. It's all for us. Now I have found that every talk I give is for me. And if you get anything out of it, that is just added bonus. So, grief. Why do we grieve? Because, to put it just very simply, because of an unmet expectation. And the unmet expectation is that we go home and we say, "Hi, honey, I'm home," and there's no one to receive it. No one to say back, "Oh, I'm glad you are." The unmet expectation of walking out the barn and there's just one horse, when yesterday there were two. Well, also because, who grieves? Everybody. Everybody who's alive. If we live long enough, we will grieve. And if you haven't grieved yet, you haven't had a real reason, then last night you got it. The Lions aren't going to the Super Bowl. Even though there was that hope and expectation, and boy, is it ever unmet. And if that wasn't enough, then there's tomorrow, when we no longer even have the illusion that decency, integrity can be at the helm of this country. It's like, who are we kidding here? It's another terribly unmet expectation. And if you're one of those who struggles with that, come tomorrow at 6 p.m. to the UCC, United Church of Christ, on Millam Road. We will be together to just support each other and basically to see that we're not alone, that we still have power, we still have a voice, and we certainly can hold on to our own decency and integrity. Who else grieves? And why else do we grieve? We grieve because we lose people. We grieve because we lose ability. We age. We notice that the body changes. We're weaker. What we could do before, we can't anymore. We get a terrible diagnosis that also limits our possibilities, and we grieve that too. Then we're also beings who can imagine things. We can have ideas and goals. And if those expectations are unmet, we grieve that too. The idea of becoming someone who then we don't. We grieve because we identified with a career and the career is over. We grieve that which we never had. Parents that cared for us, that loved us unconditionally. The possibilities that never materialize. We grieve for so many different reasons. And then, of course, here we are in this particular society. And when grief strikes us, we catch feelings, some heavy, heavy feelings. But we live in the society where those feelings are not particularly welcomed. Also, we feel like, hey, we shouldn't burden other people. We don't want, grief to rub off on them. So we feel like we really should hold it into ourselves, and it's so hard to grieve like that. Now, in my old country, when somebody died in the family, then the custom was to wear black. And so if somebody showed up wearing completely black, we knew that they are grieving. And that was a signal to us that, tend with care around them. They are going through something. And then as they were progressing through the process of grief, they would change their clothes, they would introduce color, and they would have just a little ribbon, black ribbon. So now we knew that they had lost somebody some time ago, but they're in a little bit of a more settled, maybe it feels a little bit better, so maybe we don't have to tend quite so carefully around them, but they're still tender. And then as they were ready, they removed the ribbon and reintroduced color. In this country, we also say, what is the cure for grief? Have you ever heard that? The cure for grief. But that implies that grief is an illness and that it needs curing. And how can that be an illness? So think about that. You really love somebody, and then they die. And you've spent so much time with them. You had created a life. You have imagined a life. You had hopes. You had plans. And everything has come to a screeching halt. And now you need to be cured of those hopes. You need to cure your heart. You're supposed to somehow eliminate them from your beingness, as if it were an illness, and you need to heal it out, heal it away. Why would we even think that? Living with grief grief changes us. Just as we change each other, the absence of us changes us. There's no need to cure here anything. We just need to notice the changes that occur. How we are being shaped by this particular loss. And this loss can be a human, can be an animal. We can love so many things. Even animals grieve. There's nothing to cure here. But we live in this society, in this country where, you go to a self-help book, the section, and then there's the 7 most important principles for a successful life, the 10 most important steps to be a good parent, and then, of course, there is one on grief, the 5 steps of grief. And I used to know them, but then a grief expert once said, forget about it, and I do as I'm told. because it's crazy. So when Kübler-Ross she established them in 1969. So it's as if until 1969, nobody grieved properly because they didn't have the 5 steps of grief. And then after 69, luckily we were saved and we knew how to. But in fact, we were confused more than anything because those principles she created them for people who received a terminal diagnosis. So, terminal. You know that the end is near, and you probably will experience some anger, some denial. You might want to bargain a little bit. It takes a little bit to get to acceptance, if ever. So it was established for a totally different role, but us being this society who thinks that everything is fixable, and it has to be neat and linear, and we all should go through it, and we don't go through it that particular way, then there's something wrong with that person. Then you're not doing it right. So if you grieve properly, Then the person dies, you cry, there's a set amount of time for that. Then you're a little bit angry, then you have some denial, then you bargain a little bit, but all of that in a very short amount of time, nicely packaged, nothing exceptional, nothing really out of the ordinary. You don't make a scene ever. And then in about a year, we're going to say a year, you're good and done if you did everything right. Because, in about a year's time, you have gone through all the first Christmas, the first Thanksgiving, the first this, the first that. And in about a year's time, obviously, you've done everything right, you followed all the steps, and you're done. You're good to go. And that's not how it is at all. That is just not how it is at all. First of all, these steps are not true. And then the things that I hope when we walk away, we will remember that, like the average person, the way the average person grieves, if you will walk away and know that there is no average person, then the right way to grieve, if you walk away from here knowing that there's no right way to grieve, no wrong way, it's your way to grieve. It's your absolute unique way to grieve. You know what you need, you know what you're feeling, and that is authentically yours to go through. Yours. Now, we grieve because we connect. And most of us have about 5 really important human beings in our lives whom we connect the most to. And yeah, I'll give you a minute. You're counting right now, so I don't want to disturb you. You're identifying and counting the 5. Those are the ones that we connect the strongest to. And then our hopes, our disappointments, our letdowns, all of them are connected to them. And then outside that circle, there are more people. And in that circle, it can be the 5, could be even animals. So that's why we grieve, because we connect, because we love, because we open up, because we make ourselves vulnerable. And then so when that loss occurs, we hurt. And then we notice the absence of their presence. And who can dictate to us how should we experience that? But people do, because while the average person doesn't exist, while there is no right way to grieve, guess who exists? Those who know how you should grieve. Those who know without the shadow of the doubt that what you're doing is not right anymore. You need to get out. You need to start dating. You need to start going to the movies. You need to. Those do exist. And for those of us who are grieving and who are tender, and if we have people in our lives who come and tell us it's time to move on, they're not doing it because they're evil, because they don't care, because they're insensitive. They're doing it because they haven't increased their tolerance towards people's suffering, other people's suffering. And if I don't have tolerance for your suffering, then I want your suffering not to exist. And the way to make that suffering not to exist is to tell you that your suffering must be over now. That's the only way I can cope with this. So if we have people in our circle who are grieving, then it is on us to increase our tolerance for their pain. Because if we increase our tolerance for their pain, we can just sit with them. We can just sit with them and allow them to experience their process, however it is true for them. And then it takes as long as it takes. It's not about us, it's about them. Who grieves? Everybody. Why? Because we love. Where does it come from? From this unmet expectation, the hopes, the plans. It's like you have a script, right? And you write the script together with that person. And you know it so well. It's such a comfortable script. And then you come home one day and it's all just tore apart. And you knew which line is yours, which line is theirs. When you come in, you knew exactly when they come in. And that script is torn. And now you have to write the script alone. And that's just, painful. What does grief look like? Well, sometimes it looks like regret. Mine is Melody Lane. Or one of mine is Melody Lane. So when you go here on Shaver Road, you will see Melody Lane. A friend of mine used to live on it. And I used to visit her once a week. And then she went to assisted living. I used to visit her once a week. Then I got a leak, and I couldn't visit her once a week. She got ill. I would still visit her, but not so regularly. Once she called, and she said she really would like to see me. And I could tell that it's urgent. And I said, I'm coming tomorrow. And I forgot. And then I remembered a couple of days later, and I said, oh God, I gotta go see her. But of course, I wasn't feeling well, but I could have gone. Let's be clear. I could have gone. And then I got a call from her daughter that she passed. And every time I drive by Melody Lane, there's that, I didn't do it. And for a while, I used to try to talk to her like, I'm so very sorry. But there's no undoing that because it's so final. So sometimes it looks like regret. Sometimes it's like writing out a check. You never needed to do that. The other person did it. Pumping your own gas. You never needed to do that. Or taking your car for an oil change or making an omelet. Because it's always the other person who did that for you. And that's grief. And that washes over you. And that brings feelings. And it's okay. Whenever it comes, it's okay. And your heart is tender, and it's okay. And maybe you see a family with children, and there seems to be so much unconditional love. And you never had that. There's that feeling. How could my life, or what would my life would have looked like had I had that? I don't know. But it brings feelings. So grief, if we live long enough, we will all experience it. We will all experience it in ways small and big. And I don't know that it ever goes away, nor do I think that we should have the expectation that it goes away. The only thing that happens is that we are shaped by it. We live with that person's shaped hole in our hearts, in our souls. And when that first laugh comes, grief can feel as like guilt. How come I'm laughing again? I didn't think I ever would or that I should. What if, does this mean that I didn't love them enough or I don't miss them enough if I'm able to enjoy something again? And that is the shift that we go through. The first laugh, feels funny, feels a little bit wrong, but then we get used to laughing again. Then we engage in life again. And of course, we're changed. Of course, we're different. And it's okay. There is no average person. There's no right way or wrong way to grieve. And there's no clean, nice steps to go through. There's only your way. So embrace it. Let it be. Expect it not to be something other than what it is. Let it be. And if you care for somebody who's grieving, let them be. Increase your tolerance for their pain and allow them to just experience themselves exactly as they are. That way, we don't introduce fresh injury to an already very vulnerable heart. And that way, we care for one another in the most beautiful way. And that way, we can share that grief. And everything that we share, the heavy burden becomes just a little bit lighter. The joy, of course, becomes intensified. But that's how I hope that we can be there for one another when we go through these rough patches. And it takes as long as it takes. And I hope that in this community, we develop the courage and the welcoming to freely share with one another what we're going through. So when the grief washes over us, we can just say, I should have worn my little black ribbon today. But I'm telling you, it's Black Ribbon Day. Or maybe it's a black outfit day. And then we know, oh, tread gently. They are going through something. So it is my hope and wish that this is how we come together as a community with each other, for each other, and for ourselves. And so it is. Thank you.